Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Check-In for July 28th, 2020. It's Terraform Tuesday, my favorite day of the week, and we are going to be talking about two interesting providers that exist in the Terraform landscape. One is the HTTP provider, and the other one is the external provider, and they are interesting because they let you do some weird things with Terraform. Not weird, but like really useful things that are not built into Terraform and don't require you to know how to write your own provider in Go or something. Like you don't need to do that. You can use these providers to do some of that. Only housekeeping item I have is just a quick reminder, a gentle reminder. I do have a book on the Terraform certification. It's a guide to help you figure out what to study if you're interested in getting that Terraform certification. So if that is of interest to you, I will include a link down in the discussion so you can, or down in the description, so you can purchase that book if you like. It's only $15, which I think is like, it's a pretty good deal. Because if I say so myself, I think I did a pretty good job with the other author, Aidan Ermey, of really encapsulating what is in that certification and what you need to know to pass. So with that out of the way, let's check in. How we doing? It's Tuesday. You know what that means. I mean, aside from Terraform Tuesday, it's Taco Tuesday. Are you having tacos today? If so, I'd like to know what kind of tacos you are planning to have because there's so many different kinds of tacos out there. Now, I am actually having tacos on Taco Tuesday. I'm excited for this. We are having tilapia fish tacos with a red cabbage slaw. We're making it a little fancy here. We're not going with the standard chicken or bean tacos. We're getting fancy. So hopefully you are having a delicious meal today, and maybe that meal is tacos. If so, let me know in the comments or reach out to me on Twitter. I want to hear about your taco adventures. Anyway, so let's talk about these two, I won't say weird, but really useful and somewhat unique providers within the Terraform landscape. One of them is HTTP. This is only available as a data source. There's no resource that you build with the HTTP provider or HTTP provider. What it does allow you to do is basically send a web request to whatever URL you want and then parse the response from that web request. And the response could be in plain text or it could be in JSON. It doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is because if the response is in JSON, you can parse that. If Terraform, for whatever reason, doesn't want to parse it, doesn't recognize it natively, you can use JSON decode. It's a function in Terraform. Decode that JSON and then consume it in whatever way makes sense for you. So if you have some information published somewhere behind a URL and you need that information for your Terraform configuration, boom, there you go. Is a really easy way to do it. Okay, so that's one of the providers. And the other provider is called External. External allows you to run an arbitrary script using an arbitrary program. It doesn't have to be Bash. It doesn't have to be PowerShell. As long as you pass it an executable and potentially a script to go along with that executable, or it could just be that the executable itself is a compiled one that runs, it needs to do a couple things. The first thing is for its input, it has to parse whatever you give it in standard in. And that will be JSON encoded data that goes into standard in. The information that's part of the standard in is submitted through a block, a map of query values. So that is what goes into the program. And then the program, when it's done, has to exit with a 0 code saying thumbs up, I executed properly. And it has to supply to standard out JSON encoded data as a response. So as long as it's JSON in, JSON out, we're good to go. So you could write any Bash script or PowerShell script or Python script or whatever you want. And as long as it abides by these things, you could have that script go out and do whatever you need it to as part of a larger Terraform configuration. Now, this doesn't guarantee idempotency or anything fancy like that. What it does allow you to do is to tie in things that don't have a native Terraform provider into your Terraform configuration, because you can either run that script or you can query that website. Now, if you want to really get down into the weeds, you could write your own provider. There's lots of guidance for that. And now the Terraform registry has been expanded to include providers as well as modules. The process is ongoing, but at a certain point, you'll be able to publish your own providers to the Terraform registry, and then others can consume them. Whereas before, you had to create your own custom provider and then download it and put it in a specific directory for Terraform to recognize that as an available provider. You don't have to do that, or won't have to do that shortly. You'll be able to use that online registry to pull down non-native providers to your Terraform configuration. That's pretty exciting. So I thought I'd do a quick demo and show you how these two providers work. So let's bounce over to Visual Studio Code. Let me just move a couple things around. There we go. All right, there's my screen. Here's my folders and my terminal. And what do we want to look at here? Let's expand the 2020-07-28 folder. And if you're looking for these files, they're on my GitHub. I'll include a link in the description if you wanted to, follow along. And I've got two folders inside this folder: external provider and HTTP provider. So these obviously show how you would use these two providers. So let's do the HTTP provider first. And all we have is a main.tf file here. And within that main.tf, we have our HTTP data source. You don't have to declare a provider. There's nothing to declare about the provider. You just say you want to use it as a data source, and it'll automatically detect and install that HTTP provider. And I'm calling it my IP. And the URL I'm supplying is http ifconfig.me. And if you've ever used this website, you know that it simply returns your public IP address from wherever the request came from. That's it. It is awesome, because if you are building a configuration where you need to configure a firewall rule to allow connectivity from where you are right now, you can use this as a data source to do that. It's super simple and really useful. So within my outputs, I have my IP address, and that is found in the attribute body. So body is one of the attributes that you get out of this data source, and the other one is response headers. So you can inspect the response headers from your request. Within the data source itself, you can also specify request headers to go with that URL. So you could include authentication data or other things within that request header. Oh, hey, Robert. Thank you. Loving the shirt too. I got this. It's Old Navy. It's nothing fancy, but Blue Flamingo's hard to turn down. Anyway. And then, well, it probably makes more sense if I just run it. So let's go into HTTP provider, and I already ran Terraform in it, and we'll just run Terraform apply real quick and see what happens. All right. So what do I get as output for this? I'm going to get a few pieces of output here. The first one is my IP. So my IP, this is my current public IP. I'm sure it will shift in a little bit because, FiOS does that. And then you can see I get the response date. So that was actually in the response headers. If we look at the response headers is basically it's basically a map. If you look at it, it's a Terraform map, and Terraform knows how to treat maps. And one of the values is date equals and then the date. So what I can do is in my output or somewhere in my configuration, I can refer to that specific value by doing this square brackets and date, and then I'll get the value back that's stored in that particular response header. So that's really useful if there's something in the header you need to inspect as well. So thumbs up for that. I love this provider. It's really useful. Let's take a look at the external one next. So go into the external provider folder, and let's take a look at main.tf. That's what I have in here. I got my data source, and I've got my output. Now it's external, and I'm calling it example. And the first thing is you have to say, what program are you using? And then if there's a script component to that program, where is that script? So I'm going to use PowerShell in this example because I'm on a Windows machine, but you could also do this in Bash. It's pretty straightforward. And then the program is in the same directory. So I can just do /program.ps1. It's going to execute that program. Now, I might want to pass arguments to that program. How would I do that? That's this query map that we have here. So query takes a map object, and within that map object, you have keys and values. These are going to be encoded as JSON and submitted to the program in standard out. So let's take a look at what's in the program. We'll go to program.ps1, and this is super simple. I get the payload from the system console. So I'm just reading from standard in, and I'm going to put that in a variable JSON payload. And then I'm going to convert that to a PowerShell object, JSON. And from there, I can refer to one of the values inside JSON by name. And since there's only one value in there called name, I can do JSON.name and store that in the name variable. And then I'm going to write output. And remember, the output has to be in JSON as well. So I'm using what's called heredoc syntax in PowerShell. And if you're using Bash, it's kind of the same thing. You just use its heredoc version of this. But basically, it's going to interpret this as exactly as it's written. So I got the curly braces here so that it's valid JSON, and I've got a key value pair. Message is the key, and then the value is hello, $name, and PowerShell will correctly interpret this and substitute whatever value I put in there. So what I should get is valid JSON message hello, $name. So let's make sure that actually happens. And the result is the attribute that carries that JSON payload from the script. So let's go up one directory and down into the external provider, and we'll do Terraform apply again. And I should get back, there we go, result equals message equals hello Ned. And remember, this is in JSON, so you have to interpret it appropriately. What would happen if we just added message in here? Let's try that. Will it convert it to a map and give me the results I want? It did. So it correctly was able to convert the JSON to a map and then give me just the text of the message by adding the square brackets in there. So if you needed to get just the value, there you go. You can refer to the value. And you can do lists and all the other kind of crazy stuff that you can do in JSON. This is a very simple example, but you can see where the power is between these two providers. If you have something that doesn't have a native Terraform provider and you need to integrate it into your Terraform configuration, here are two powerful ways to do exactly that. So that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Shout out to Robert for, I think, 2 weeks in a row being the live streamer who says hi. I appreciate that very much. If you have a topic that you want me to address in the world of Terraform, ping me on Twitter or, leave something in the comments or find me on LinkedIn. I'm always looking for a new topic or angle. I was working on these today, which is why I thought of them, but I'm really up for whatever. Tomorrow will be tech analysis, and I'm going to be doing the last of my Cloud Field Day 8 vendors that I was interested in. So that'll be tomorrow. So tune in for that. And